Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have John Linden, CEO of Mythical Games, to discuss next-gen gaming and building player-owned economies. It is great to have you with us, John. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
You got it. Tell us about Mythical Games.
Yeah, so Mythical we've really been focused since 2018 on what we really believe is the next generation of gaming. And I think we've seen two major kind of events hit the video game industry over the last decade or two. And we think the next one's about to hit. So the first one for us was kind of free to play. That caused our industry to go from about 100 million gamers a month to nearly 4 billion gamers now. So nearly half the world's population are playing games every month now. The second one was kind of this concept of UGC content, so user-generated content. So things like Roblox and Minecraft, but also esports and influencers and brands getting involved in all that. And we think there's roughly about 10 to 15 million stakeholders now that are creating content, more content than one studio could ever make on its own. And we think the next phase of this kind of evolution is around now kind of democratizing the game economies, bringing players, letting players be entrepreneurial, letting all these stakeholders create, but actually be part of that game economy. And Mythical's really focused around the next generation experience of things like digital ownership, marketplace activity, even new forms of streaming and live streaming.
What will it take to drive mass adoption of blockchain in the gaming community?
Yeah, so I think one has been, it takes a little time. Games are not super fast to make. It's almost like producing a movie, right? So to do two great content movies, it takes a long time and similar to games. So I think we're now getting to the point now that we're starting to see studios that are putting out quality work. Last year we had a couple games that hit about 1 million players in the game, which is a big milestone. Suddenly in these new economies, we had multiple games now that had over 1 million consumers in them. We were one of them with the game called Blanco's Block Party. This year, I think we're going to move it to another order of magnitude. I think you'll start seeing some games this year in 10 to 20 million players. And I think that's going to be a big pivot, because now we're bringing in, literally an order of magnitude over last year. And I think we're only a year or two out from seeing games that will have 50 to 100 million players. So I think as we onboard games that have real players, real economies, and have the concepts of kind of Web3 blockchain behind the scenes, and onboards them appropriately, we're going to see natural usage from the space.
Who are you partnering with, and what games are expected to launch this year?
Yeah, so we have two games we're very excited about. One is actually a partnership with the NFL and the NFL Players Association. So we actually partner with the league. We have a game called NFL Rivals. The game has been went through beta in December. It's now in kind of a soft launch in a couple countries just to kind of get it ready. And it'll be launching, in several months here. So that's a really great game for us. It's something we've been working with the NFL on and really thinking through, how does ownership work in a game? What can you do? How do you interact? How do you have different fan engagement with the league, the teams themselves, and even the NFL players, right? So that's a really exciting game for us, coming out on mobile very soon. We have another game we're working on that's shortly out too, and it's going into soft launch as well, called Nitro Nation World Tour. And it's a racing title, and we partnered with a studio that had an amazing racing title in the past. Their last game came out probably 4 or 5 years ago. I think they had 80 million players in that game. And we've been working with them for the last 2 years of really thinking about the same concepts. How does digital ownership affect racing? What can you do? What's the new game models and gameplay that come off of that? So those are two games we're really excited about coming out. They're very close for Mythical to get those released, and we're excited to see how they do.
Yeah, NFL's come a long way from those animated dancing robots that they have on the commercials in between. What differentiates the Mythical Games gaming experience from your competitors?
Yeah, I think we're really focused. We've all come from the game industry, so we're kind of gamers that have made a lot of great games that are thinking about how do we bring that tech into the industry. And I think a lot of the other groups out there they're doing well, but they're really thinking about the other direction. They started in that kind of fintech, blockchain, Web3 space, and they're kind of figuring out how do we bring gamers into our world. And I think we have a little bit different philosophies. So I think there's been times that people are like, well, you're not truly Web3, and I think we are, and we're getting there, but also we want to make sure we can bridge those worlds. And I think, some of the concepts are still a little complicated for the gamer consumer. We also have a lot the crypto's made for gaming, and I think the concepts are made for gaming, but at the end of the day, gamers are gamers, right? They're not financial traders, they're not crypto traders. So we have to onboard them appropriately. It has to feel like a fun world for them to be in, and make sure that we remove a lot of those complexities. So we're starting a little gentle with some of the gamers, but we're adding more and more functionality as we grow and as we get them accustomed to this type of new economy.
I think when we talk about Web3 more holistically, not just gaming, we hear about content creation, creators being able to monetize the art that they're putting out there, that there's more data protection and so forth. But you have 10 to 20 million gamers on each month or with each game, as you mentioned earlier. How do they own that content? Are they getting paid to game? It still has to be hosted on a platform like Mythical Games. I think that's kind of what the question is. What does content creation, ownership, and monetization look like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different definitions, and frankly, I think every game has a little bit of its own interpretation of that. But I think for us, we kind of view it in terms of it really becomes kind of this consumer freedom, right? Consumers now can decide what they do with it, you know. And it's not, to me, I think this is a big misconception around Web3 and Web3 gaming. It's not about financial return, right? That's not what we're in it for. We're really in it for consumer behaviors, right? To where players now can decide what they do. They don't have to sell it at all. They don't have to sell it for a profit. They can sell it for a loss. They can give it away. Whatever they want to do now, they have access to do that. And once you have that framework in place, you can simply allow that for other players or for other groups as well. So we had a game, Blanco's Block Party. The last year we introduced, Burberry introduced a new fashion line, literally through a digital character. And we think those type of opportunities are really, really exciting. It's a way for brands now to interact with consumers. Consumers are in on it, right? They can either choose to buy it or they can wait or sell it or whatever they want to do. So again, it's really giving kind of a new layer of business within these massive online digital worlds and giving consumers the freedom to be part of it and kind of choose how they want to interact.
All about the immersive experiences, that's for sure. So John, what's next for the company?
I think for us right now, I said we're pretty heads down. We got two massive titles. As I mentioned before, I think we'll see several games this year, not too many, start to hit that 10 to 25 million players, and we're hoping for 2 of them. So we're pretty heads down right now. Basically kind of thinking about what comes next. We have several other games we're working on, but we really want to prove these out and get it to that next level, because I think as games start hitting that next threshold, that 10 to 25 million gamers, you're going to see more and more studios start to adopt the tech. And I think that's the next goal is how do we get to 50 to 100 million gamers? Because then at that point, I think the entire gaming industry will jump into the market.
All right. Appreciate the insight, John. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.